tracking DPW.
Alright.
Okay, we're on.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 14th, 2022 Capital Improvement Committee meeting. We will start, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We will start with approval of the minutes of our September 6th, 2022 meeting. So, did we get these in email?
I believe you did. No.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. It's basically going over all the votes. Red is the action items. Capital S.
It's L-E-S-A-B-O-R. It's just spelled.
Okay.
Just where the action is, it's spelled wrong. Up at top, it's spelled okay. It's actually capital S, one word.
We'll fix it on the website too.
But I go through life.
Correcting this spelling.
O-Y, one word, yeah.
So the red are all the actions.
Correct.
So the black are all the ones we still have actions to take on.
Correct.
Right.
Update spreadsheet.
Well, we took an action on master plan.
Well, this is from our first meeting, so we take actions on others in the second meeting.
All right, the red is just action second meeting. Got it. Okay. I've got the system you have set up now, Susan. I will accept a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion. Besides the name, spelling correction.
Sorry, I should have waited.
No, you're fine. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda is presentation from requesters. We have one requester here.
Hey, good evening. My name's Sam Kenny. I'm a Conservation Commission member. I am also on the Riverfront Advisory Committee. I believe basically submitted two articles for consideration this year. One for work at the Moonlight Brook culvert, potential culvert replacement. Another for park improvements to Shanda Park. Is there any preference, I guess, on which one we start with?
Start with the
Dealer's choice.
Start with the culvert.
Yeah.
Okay. So these have been primarily the two main topics of discussion at the riverfront level. Also, have been highly relevant to the Conservation Commission, as Shanda Park is a town-owned conservation property. So spent a lot of time talking about the two of these items. So specifically with the culvert where Moonlight Brook outfalls into the Lamprey River. That is basically a feature under the land bridge that pretty much connects the two portions of Shanda Park. But there are currently three 24-inch diameter culvert pipes in that location. The culvert as designed is probably not functioning correctly. It is often kind of filled with sediment. There's kind of stagnant flow. Water does not pass readily through that area. They're also potentially kind of undersized for existing, regulations. Basically, over time, the design storms that culverts are designed around have increased quite a bit. What used to be called, 100-year storms started happening every, 20 years and then every 10 years. So a lot of the flood guidance and hydrology data sets and things like that have been updated. So the specific ask here is that there's sort of a multifaceted problem that's potentially occurring with Moonlight Brook's outfall at this location. The culvert being physically undersized. Overall, regulations for stormwater are requiring communities to do a lot more. This is obviously a primary, outfall location for, one water body into another. And there's also some kind of ongoing documented water quality issues at this location where Moonlight Brook goes into the Lamprey River. So there seems to be kind of a lot of things potentially happening here. The specific ask that made this warrant article was for $50,000. The purpose of that money would be primarily conducting an H&H study or a hydrology and hydraulic study. Basically, in a nutshell, the purpose of that would be to determine, is the culvert undersized? What needs to be done to fix it? How big would it need to be? And basically an identification of the problem and a determination of, if there is a problem, what is needed ultimately to rectify that problem, which would inform a larger design effort down the line. So I'll kind of stop there, I guess, and see if there's any questions at this juncture.
Questions?
So if it's not adequate, or if it's clogged, what happens is the water, there's no flooding that goes on there, or is there?
No major flooding. I mean, Shanda Park has flooded in the past, like king tide issues or high.
This would build up on the other side of the pathway there, like before the park, right?
Likely. So it's, I think if there's, the primary issue at play is that if there is a high amount of water that needs to pass through here from Moonlight out into the Lamprey, it may not be able to do that effectively right now. So I apologize that a lot of this sounds a little bit close. I am not a stormwater specific engineer, so my descriptions are a little bit defunct to what I would like them to be here. But this is something that's been discussed, I guess, with a few people. I believe we have had conversations that both Sean, Greg, and Rick Molaski have been present to. I don't want to speak for them. I'm obviously not qualified nor willing to do that, but it seems to be an item that has kind of crept onto multiple people's radars for various reasons. And it always kind of comes back to the question of, are the culverts in their existing condition doing what we need them to do? And that question is hard to answer without doing that background work of, are they fine and they just need a better maintenance, or are they undersized and they need a whole-scale improvement?
Other questions? So, I have questions about the presentation, but my primary question that might make those moot are about the leveraging the capital reserve. Like, what capital reserve fund would you pull from for this?
So you're talking about specifically like the listing on the bottom here?
Yeah. So is it coming from the capital reserve fund, or is it coming from the general fund?
And this is probably where I have a limited knowledge base, and this is where this may have become most confusing. I'm not sure, and I haven't been able to. I don't think I know the answer to that as to where it should be coming from.
So, I know this original request came through within the capital reserve fund line, but it's in the general fund line now. Is that a change?
Yeah, so I think the intent was to be capital reserve, but where to put it. So yes, so the intent, the reason why he's here is asking for capital reserve. I think that was just correct me if I'm wrong, Sam.
I don't know where to put it.
This is where there is no capital.
There is no
Correct.
capital
So-
reserve to take it from, so.
So I got a copy of all the capital reserves, and all of them, all the established ones. And I'm wondering if this is an opportunity to put it into
Who manages stormwater management?
DPW.
DPW. I would need Rick Malasky to come and say he wants to pull from his capital reserve here before I felt comfortable voting for it.
The alternative is a recommendation to establish a new capital reserve.
That is an alternative. Or to pull from the general fund for the study, which would determine whether we even need to start a capital reserve.
If we consider the second request, that may guide us more towards the latter. It's not just the one.
Right.
Right, because they're both really Shanda Park related things.
Correct.
They are.
Can we call Rick?
He's occupied.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just not like, if other people are comfortable, I'm just one voice on this, and there's 3 other committee members who can vote for it, but it's his capital reserve fund to say we're gonna pull money from it, which he has a plan against, which we haven't even voted on his stuff yet, feels undercutting his authority on that capital reserve fund.
I understand. I understand that sentiment. That makes sense. I think it was a clean way to do it. It would be a new capital reserve fund.
Or
Establish. Or general fund.
say,
Yes.
is that like, when's the last time this flooded?
I'm not sure I know offhand. I apologize.
And where, you said there's documented water quality issues, documented by who?
The report, I believe, generated through the Lamprey River Advisory Committee.
Do we have a copy? Can we, these are all things that like, I feel like are information to say I want to start a new capital reserve fund. That feels big to me, right? Like,
Well, if we were gonna start investing in the second project, which is a much bigger
yeah.
endeavor, then, then that really cries for a new capital reserve.
So maybe we need to hear about the second project before we can have a, yeah.
That's a good idea.
So I will say that originally, as these projects developed, they were under one banner of general Shanda Park improvement. After significant amount of discussion, both at the Riverfront Advisory Committee and at Concom, we actually elected to potentially split them because they have almost 2 different aims and 2 potentially different timelines. And the more we discussed it and the more we kept them together, we felt like they were dragging each other down, where if they were separated, they were potentially more clear projects. So moving on to the actual park improvements project 1, I had like 3 packets that I dropped off to Bart. I apologize, I didn't know how many committee members there were, so there may not be one for everyone. But those are the 2 documents that I wanted to bring in and provide so someone could kind of see, because they relate directly to this. This project, and the town was fortunate enough to receive a grant and basically get members from New Hampshire, DES, UNH, and private professionals working under this grant program through the Great Bay Living Shoreline Project. There were 17 applications along Great Bay from the communities abutting Great Bay. 4 of those 17 were picked under this grant project to get a conceptual design of a living shoreline feature, as well as general, improvements to the surrounding areas. So Newmarket and Shanda Park was one of the 4 that was picked. It was the only one that occurred in a borderline urban setting. All of the other ones were all had significantly more space. So this project was of interest to them from the start, just because it presented a slightly different challenge. Under that grant project, they generated that 50% conceptual design that is in front of you guys right now. One image shows kind of the existing conditions of the park, and then the other one is a sort of a high-level rendering of some of the features that are being potentially proposed.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking at. Am I looking at this one?
That is the proposed one.
Okay, that's
Yes.
just want to make sure I'm looking at the right one.
Exactly.
I actually have a second, there are numbers on here like red, and there's one season such. Where is there like an index for those or a legend?
There is a full index in the backup document, and I can send that to you and the committee if that's something that can help influence the decision. But the primary piece of this would be creation of the living shoreline. That is sort of the what got the grant, what got the professionals interested, and how the most amount of time was spent talking about. It would be a very unique feature. It would be a new thing that the town does not have. Potential attraction, as there are no urban living shorelines really in New Hampshire. There's only a couple, and they're usually in much larger, more spread out areas. So it could potentially be an interesting thing for the town. There is some other just general park upkeep and rehab included in there. We got talking with them about improvements to the boat ramp. Rick had mentioned that pretty much every year he drops gravel down to kind of reinforce the boat ramp, and every year kind of just eventually migrates out into the lamprey, and we repeat the process. So things about as the park gets improved, a chance to put in like precast concrete planks or something that may have a higher capital cost, but you don't need to keep maintaining forever and ever. All the way down to a portion of actually the channel wall from Moonlight Brook, and that kind of hardened riprap area has been kind of falling away. So doing other improvements like just kind of restoring the channel banks there, doing a little bit of tree maintenance. There's some discussion about the ability to potentially capture a little bit more frontage of Shanda Park. There's actually the like courtyard area where the picnic tables are. It looks like there's a landscaped like wall feature that was constructed there, but that portion of the park doesn't actually follow the river bend. So in talking with DES and the environmentalists there, they said maybe actually be a way to potentially capture more area and move this back out to better maintain the actual bend of the river at that location. So in a nutshell, high concept idea. Living shoreline is the kind of the meat of it, the new concept, if there's an appetite to pursue it. Overall park improvements to give it a facelift also included. Specifically what the numbers that are listed here. The 75,000 was a high level discussion with a consultant who does this kind of work that basically would advance the conceptual design on that sheet, the ideas and the high level concepts generated under the grant to a more refined idea, a permitted idea, and something that could be include public input to see do we want to do these things, do we want to advance these ideas further, do we want to include X, Y, and Z in our final design. There was a lot of ideas talked on that, everything from, like I said, the boat ramp to potentially like putting in like a new kayak dock. Not all of that may have public buy-in, so some of it will include kind of refining that design in a way that meets full community support. The $425,000 number, after discussion at the riverfront level and the Conservation Commission level, the 425 is a rough expected value for the project. Does it absolutely need to be allocated in FY 24-25? The true answer is no. What the purpose of displaying that number, we believed, was showing an expected scale of what that improvement is. The thought process as well is that the 75,000 requested now would allow for a more realized design, a more pointed design, and a better actual cost estimate for the work, as that was not part of the grant group's scope to provide us with. So it would give us a more pointed cost, it would give us a more pointed design, and another kind of inflection point to figure out, is this something that can move to full implementation? There are a lot of potential grant opportunities out there that we're hoping could potentially reduce that $425,000 cost. The truth of the matter is we're just not advanced enough in our process to get serious consideration for that. People want to provide money for construction and implementation, not concept design.
Questions?
So the first year's request, would that allow for this advanced design would it be more competitive in grants?
That is the expectation, is that there's potential money out there for implementation of the projects, but the design is not far enough along to draw that interest yet.
Thank you.
The grant we received is what paid to create this, right?
Yes, so it was a very, very interesting process. It had professors from UNH, some of the regulators from the actual, wetlands and coastal bureau for DES, and private industry professionals, marine engineers, botanists, kind of given their time. So the town was able to get a lot of pretty cool people to provide some input on it and come up with a concept that could be implemented.
What would this do to the operational budget of the town?
It's a good question, and I don't know if it's fully realized yet. Without having an actual pointed design of this is all the improvements that we're going to implement, this is exactly how it's going to work, it's kind of tough to answer. It was something that we talked about a few times with the grant team, and they were very nice but very firm that providing you with cost estimates is not part of our scope at this time.
So a couple things. One, so generally the 24-25 timeline, right? Like generally capital improvement plans are long-range plans with multi-year building of funds via capital reserve fund.
Yep.
So like the 75, then 425 in 2 years seems counter to that.
It is, and again, like this, I think this is also just my inexperience of not understanding, and it seemed more prudent to try to show what we thought the final bill may be, so that rather than put a few numbers that wouldn't add up to it, just this is the cost it could potentially be. Is there interest in building towards that in the future?
Yeah, I mean, there's no fund we could even pull this from. There's literally no fund from this.
Voted for it, there's no money to.
Maybe the downtown TIF, because I think this falls under the TIF zone. I don't know, like it's been a while since I looked at that diagram, but I'm pretty sure this is within that space. But I don't know who's responsible for that outside of the council's agents to expend. I mean, there's 80 cases in there. I don't know the last time they pulled from it.
I just did a quick math, 425,000 spread out across Lorraine, 5 years would be about 85,000 a year. Which is,
Yeah.
which is more doable, but then again, there's still the issue of where
They would, you'd have to start a capital reserve fund, which the town would have to go for, in order to even fund these. I feel a lack of information to even have an opinion one way or the other to say we should or should not start a capital reserve fund for this. That feels like a weighty thing, right? To say, let's start a capital, this is just me, start a capital reserve fund.
I'm opinion this is I think this is a worthwhile project. I'm just a little worried about, and just, that things haven't been, basically you're saying you can't get strong, more firmer numbers until we vote on this, correct?
Sorry.
No, continue. I don't want
Until they fund a project to like do the discovery work, the design work.
We have to spend money to get money.
So, but the question is this: is that a capital improvement? Out of like, is this a capital improvement plan, of which we would want to start a fund to get the design work for something that may not happen, or do we want to propose that the general fund should fund the design to determine whether we should start a whole capital reserve fund for this? I don't know.
I think I agree with what you said, the latter.
I think the latter.
So first time on CIP is
Yeah.
is really the purview of this group to like I think this is a really worthwhile project, and the fact that we had this grant and did this work gives it more validity, right? It's not like we're not just shooting out of the woodwork here. But is it the purview of this group to sort of decide whether the town wants to invest in a project like that? Is that
So,
Some recommendations.
well, the way I read the RSA, I think everyone has a copy of this.
Yep. They should.
That legislative body may authorize the governing body of the municipality to appoint a capital improvement program committee, which will include membership, blah, 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 to prepare and amend a recommended program of municipal capital improvement projects over the period of at least 6 years. Capital improvement program may encompass major projects being currently undertaken or future projects to be undertaken with federal, state, or county or other public funds. The sole purpose and effect of the capital improvements program shall be to aid the mayor and selectmen in the budget committee in their consideration of an annual budget. So, I see that we have the purview of what is the capital improvement plans that go forward. We recommend the capital improvement plans. That's where I think I'm kind of sided here, because I'll agree. Like the idea of like renovating that space. Like sounds great. Like I think there's a tourist component to it. I just feel like I don't have enough like in the plan, and this might be a product of the way this process has worked, to say, yeah, we should probably bring to the voters a new capital reserve fund to fund a plan.
See, I think we should. I mean, I think that we got a grant that created, kind of an initial concept that had, people behind it that, knew what they were doing. So now we have this concept. It's something we could invest in as opposed to somebody saying, hey, let's improve the park, So there's no capital reserve. It seems like something that would be worthy to start. And it may take more than 6 years to get there.
I'm certain it would.
Yeah, I think this is a good long-term project, so if we do, and so, yeah, I would be in favor of actually starting something for it, and just, and again, we're just recommending this, and then it's up to the town council to decide if this fund gets created, correct?
It's up to the voters to
It's up to the
decide.
voters.
It has to
Even
go.
better.
It has to be a warrant
Even-
article.
Well, even better.
Even
So,
better, right?
I would say recommend it just because it is an important project, and then the voters decide, if it's an important enough project to fund.
But don't we still come back to the point is we don't know where to put it?
Well, so the recommendation was to put the money into the new fund.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we all feel comfortable with that? Is that the only option we really have?
You'd have to. The recommendation would be for the council to put on the warrant
Correct.
something for the town to vote on.
Correct. Right. I just want one more.
What would the language of that even be?
Typically,
I mean, there's very like strict language with this.
they have if you look
To
through all
see if-
these, it's very broad language. So, I mean, I don't think this committee has to come up with the exact language. I think it's the recommendation that the town council put something on the warrant to the effect of establishing a capital reserve fund with X amount of dollars. Or I can wordsmith it and put it together in this meeting. And
No,
if that's the direction the committee wants to go in. Just one more point. I think this is, we talk about plan, the lack of thereof. I think the town is moving in a direction where they want to invest in the riverfront area. They set up the riverfront advisory committee. I'm not sure how long they've been established, for a year and a half.
March 2020.
Yeah, so, COVID.
Yeah, we skipped our first
yeah.
year.
And my office is putting up a grant application, another grant for a design charrette for the riverfront area. So I think there's a lot of investment and a lot of will to invest into that area. And I don't think it would be out of left field if this committee would recommend such a fund.
So when I go back to that's fine. Yeah. All I'm saying is that when I go back to what the RSA says, I do not see enough of a plan here to say I recommend the movement of this capital improvement plan forward to have a fund started against it. The plan just, much like the other plans though, so like maybe I need to be consistent. There's other plans I voted for that also lack a level of specificity. It's just,
I think this has more specificity than some of the other things. I mean, this was a grant where a study was done.
Yeah.
A vision was created.
yeah, I'm thinking more like the plan of the committee to manage like the capital improvement moving forward. Less the I agree that like there's a ton of work obviously that's gone into this to get it to this point.
And this is a great resource for the town. This draws people in to use that ramp, to access the river, to go to lunch afterwards. I mean, this is a big.
But then I totally agree, but then I come back to you and I say, how much is it a cost to maintain it? And oh, great, all these people will come. What do we do with parking? We already have a parking issue.
Well, there is a parking place. There is a spot. There is parking there. It's maybe not adequate, but.
But that's my point, though.
And there have been plans in other departments to increase parking, but you know how that goes.
But this does have some parking. I mean.
There's some that the boat launch.
And
So
this is-
I
this would
agree.
also-
I'm just I want to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing.
So your concern is it's going to cost more to maintain it in the future than it does now? Potentially, that's the issue. Because we maintain it now, and probably not, in the most efficient way.
Right. So if we can't maintain what we have today, and we make it bigger,
But we are maintaining it now.
Well, we do maintain it.
yeah. But I thought, am I wrong? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No,
Finish your thought.
I definitely love the idea, please don't get me wrong, I support what the Conservation Committee does and has done. I just wanna make sure that, one, and you heard me talk about this last night, how does this map back to the master plan?
I got it right here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And how does it map back to Rick's budget and all of that? That's all, I'm just trying to map it all back, and again, I love it, so please don't get me wrong. I just wanna make sure we understand the unintended consequences that could happen from the investment, that's all.
So can I just state one thing, just having had the kind of privilege to listen to the whole deliberation firsthand. There is slightly more information available than the two sheets in front of you. Under the grant, they did compile like a 3 or 4 page narrative for what some of these points would incur. There is a full planting list and diagram of how the living shoreline would be constructed. I can provide that documentation, so there is a little bit more to it, but to answer your direct points, there isn't that information that you're looking for. We haven't gone to, this is the exact cost to implement, these are your O&M concerns moving forward. We just haven't made it to that level of detail yet. The grant people were nice enough to come in and give us their time, but drew a very clear line in the sand and said, we stop at concept right now.
Okay.
So, just in the master plan and water resource chapter, the recommendation on data studies and research needs, it's number 27, and it states, using New Hampshire living shoreline site suitability assessment to identify sites in Newmarket that may be suitable for specific living shoreline approaches to address erosion issues along the tidal shoreline.
And that's in the master
That's
plan?
in the master plan.
Okay, so I feel a lot more confident
Yeah.
if this is directly aligned to a master
Yeah.
plan.
You could have told me that part.
makes it
But I feel just as not confident in the plan itself to execute this, and I feel like especially when you're gonna have to go in front of voters to be like, I mean, let's admit it, nothing ever gets voted down in this town. Something that's a little more robust that we're gonna spend $425,000 next year.
I mean, this. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I mean, I think at this point we're stepping what we can do. Like, this is not really the details of the plan. This is just a recommendation to go to town council, so they can recommend it going to the voters, so they will have
Except-
more time to actually, get any more details that they need to. They're not gonna get any more.
Except our statutory requirement is determine the strength of the plan. It's actually, the budget stuff is, yes, that's a piece of it, but really, like, the authority we have is around the plan, and it's linked to the master plan.
So you gotta get to the next step before you're really gonna know what it's gonna
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah.
You gotta do the design work. We gotta fund the design work to get to the point. I mean, I think they did a fair job in sort of saying, hey, this is what we need for the design, and this is like a guesstimate of what we think we're investing in. So it's not like a $2 million project.
Yeah.
It's a $500,000 project.
And I'm on the Wentworth Chesswell committee, and like we had the same thing. Like we knew we wanted a statue made, but we really couldn't start fundraising until we knew where roughly what the statue design was going to be. So we had to get to a point. So we raised some money, but when we finally came up with some sort of like final design, that's when the real planning came in. Because like, okay, now we know how much money we have and how much we need, but there was that liminal space where we're like, how much it's going to be, where is it going to be? I'm okay voting on this right now.
Let's wait for Jane.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, well, I'm not. Now she's out of the room. Yes, but.
So, what I was going to vote on, I really would like to see, this is just me, I'm just one person, maybe it's just as we update what these plans look like. I think these plans are just sorely lacking in the detail we need to.
And this is the common theme throughout this whole process.
This is just the information that we're given on this one spreadsheet.
And that will be approved upon. Can you
Still
go
locked again? Okay.
Let's hurry up.
It's almost too secure.
Is there a council meeting?
No, shouldn't be.
No.
First and second, sorry, Thursday and
Next
third.
week.
Yeah,
Next week.
next week.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Is that where we are?
Yeah. I mean, is there any more discussion before a motion?
Are you all set?
I'm good, I'm
Okay.
good.
I mean, I would make a motion that the CIP makes a recommendation to the council to establish a capital reserve fund for the purpose of first investing in a design, it would be a design study.
Yeah, what the discussion had centered around was advancing it from concept design to something that could be put out for a bid.
Right, so actually we're saying that this would fund the finalization of an engineering design for the project at the cost of $75,000 to be then funded over subsequent years.
Just trying to get my mind around that motion. So, we're asking the council, could you read it back to me? Do you have the motion?
Yes.
Sorry.
He said that he wants to recommend to the CIP make a recommendation to the town council to establish a capital reserve fund to invest in the finalization of an engineering design for.
So we would need to broaden the purpose of the capital reserve fund for Shanda Park.
So the capital reserve fund would be for the, improvement,
For like the living shoreline.
living shoreline,
Yeah.
the whole improvement project.
Okay.
But we'd be recommending that we stick 75 grand in there
And then use that money for
So do we
for
need
this
two?
engineering design.
No, I'm getting like, do we need two, like one, a recommendation to establish a capital reserve fund, or we can lump it into one, say establish capital reserve fund for the living shoreline, and this year fund it at the $75,000 level with a code of whatever.
Yeah. So
Is that a clean enough motion?
You're gonna call it the capital reserve fund for the living shoreline?
Shanda Park living shoreline?
Yeah, that's a good way to
So
characterize
Shannon
it.
Park living shoreline.
my thoughts is, okay, you get the study, now is it defunct after that? We don't wanna make it too specific where, it's only for one purpose, which is that study, what happens in the future for.
That's why I said, don't
Yeah.
include the word study in it, but
Yeah.
broaden it to a capital reserve fund
For
for the Shanda Park living shoreline.
Right.
That's very simple.
And the recommendation we're making is to make this commitment for 75 grand to do this design, because you can't get to the next
Right.
step without it. So you're either like stuck in the mud, or you gotta go to this next step, and then you can decide how much more you want to invest in it.
it just,
So would that be like two then? One to establish a fund and one to make a
One to fund-
recommendation? That way it's, you know.
is that cleaner from the,
Probably if you did two.
Yeah, that way, you know, we can have the
Establish
fund,
it.
and if something changes, they can ignore the second one.
yeah.
And rather than having, if you ignore one part, you
It
have to
feels
ignore both.
bureaucratically heavy for them to have to put money into it that they then would have to expend out, but I get it. It makes sense.
And it's a desirable, it's not,
Yeah, it's not,
Yep.
yeah, it's a D, right?
yeah.
All right,
There's a
Okay,
some,
so
like,
the motion is.
necessary design,
Yeah. To a degree, so our discussion at the Concom level was actually about listing it as an N or necessary for some of the other improvement portions of it. Not so much the living shoreline, that definitely seems to qualify more as a D, but like the retaining walls and the boat ramp and some of those other parts, the committee or Conservation Commission felt somewhat strongly that those could rise to the need of necessary.
but if we didn't have this capital reserve fund and a living shoreline capital improvement project, we would still fix those things. We would just find other funding sources for it.
We have it.
Well,
Not the walls and not.
It's been an ongoing discussion.
Okay.
we still should fix those things.
Yeah.
But it feels like the totality of the project is a D to me.
That's what I think.
Okay.
All right, so do we need two motions? One to recommend starting a capital reserve fund for for this project, and then another for the funding level of. Do you feel cleaner with that, Susan?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not Susan.
All right.
Art, you feel better?
I think that's a fine way forward.
Rich, you want to amend your motion?
So my motion then would be, again, for the CIP to recommend to the town council that we establish a capital reserve fund to support the living shoreline capital improvement of Shanda Park project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is it? I'm sorry about the town council can't establish the capital reserve fund.
Make
Is the
a warrant.
recommendation to?
I said we make a recommendation
Okay.
to the town council to establish it.
No.
Or it's not to establish it, we're making a recommendation to have them place it on the
Warrant.
warrant.
There. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So, do you wanna read it back?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'd like it.
Good now.
Sorry.
Okay, Rich makes the motion that the CIP make a recommendation to the town council to place on the warrant
The
the establishment of a capital reserve fund to support the Shanda Park living shoreline.
That's it. It's a winner.
Get that taken. Okay, and Brian.
Seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes 4-0. Now the funding of the capital reserve.
Should we do that?
Well,
I'll-
hold on. I'm sorry. The funding goes into the warrant. It goes into the language of the initial warrant.
So you can just amend it.
So why don't we amend the motion to
Yeah.
include that?
To a funding level of,
Yeah, at a funding level, so at the end, we just say at a funding level of $75,000 for fiscal year 23-24,
in a code of,
and a code of desirable.
Desirable. There's his amendment. Do you agree with the amendment?
Yes.
All right. All those in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
You seconded that amendment, correct?
What's that?
You seconded that amendment.
Right, I
Brian
can't-
did, okay, alright.
And what do we do about the culverts?
I have an inclination with the culvert, but I'll let the. My gut is he needs to talk to Rick.
Yeah, that it should be a
It falls under, yeah,
wastewater.
stormwater management.
Yeah, and that's more of an end project anyway, so it's a little different.
Yeah, well, the Moonlight Brook one,
Moonlight Brook does.
yeah. Shanda? So, yeah, go ahead.
I think it's under, so this would fall in the culvert, so this is stormwater management. I think if it had to be slated into a capital reserve fund, if it wasn't established, another one for specific to this project. So,
I mean, we have other ones that are stormwater management that were specifically about culverts, correct?
right, it's just MS4.
The MS4 stuff,
Yeah.
but it's all culvert work. It all feels like, just because one is Conservation Commission, the other's MS4 related, to me doesn't, it's culvert work, stormwater management.
And
To which I would want Rick's opinion on some.
okay. Well,
I mean,
he's-
Rick can go to the town council with Conservation Commission, regardless of how much money we put into stormwater management, and say, I want to spend $50,000 on a study this year. It's an existing fund he can pull from.
Yeah. So I guess this would be another recommendation then. If the committee is not comfortable making a designation or a funding request line item, maybe it'd be a recommendation that something to the effect that Rick brings it forward and asks.
I'm
Yeah.
not comfortable making that recommendation. I'm saying I recommend the Conservation Commission and Rick work on where this
That's
falls in
fine.
his priority of culvert.
Sorry. I was gonna say, your personal recommendation is that conservation work with Rick to
Work
talk
with
to
Rick.
the council, not
Yeah.
not official. So we're on record as not being.
Yeah, not saying, Rick, put this at the top of your list.
Okay, so then, that's the case then. I guess this is withdraw. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be withdrawn. I mean, I feel like it just has, like, it wouldn't go forward from us. I'm sorry, I'm being too loud. Other people need to have more voice in this. I should be abusing the chair's position.
No, I agree with you. If we could get in touch with Rick right now and say, if he were to be willing to pull this out of his capital reserve, then we could vote on it.
Yeah.
But we can't.
Or willing to say, I need to add more to my capital reserve fund in order to fund this.
Because there is no capital reserve fund.
No, I think this needs to, he has a plan for culvert work that it feels to me this culvert work needs to get either part of that plan or a standalone plan that he has got a plan against, much like Sean is pulling out multiple projects against his 2 capital reserve funds.
So what do we do here? Do we vote not to recommend this and then you guys come forward and then they handle next, or do we just not vote on this? Or do we
I
withdraw?
don't think there's a need to vote it. It's not like, it's an item on the table.
Okay.
I don't know, what do you think, Bart?
Well, given it's Rick's, DPW's capital reserve fund, and a new one's not recommended to be established, then there's no action needed.
It does feel like a lot of these too, like a general recommendation might be that, and maybe this is just our work moving forward. Like when I think about the Living Shoreline project, talking about the kayaks, I'm like, oh, the rec department might be able to do some work there, right? Like their capital, like feels like there's potentially multiple funds, the downtown TIF one's another one that could pull and help a project. There's probably other projects where it seems more cross-departmental collaboration might help.
And that should be a recommendation from this committee.
I think it should be. I feel very much that cross-departmental, a lot of these things are happening in silos as opposed to cross-departmentally, which might make some of these stronger.
Steve, I think we talked about that last time too, like we talked about the school department working with the rec department, about, the speakers on the field. I think we do need to get rid of the silo mentality associated with it, because things do bleed into one another.
May I make a suggestion that, when we do these, I'm sorry, making you listen to, maybe like.
Hey, are we good with it? Should we let him, like?
Yeah, I think we voted on all this stuff, right?
Yeah,
So
you can hang as long as you want, but you don't.
Just one comment on that thought. So at the end of February, we did actually ask the grant team to come in, and they presented, and Sean, Amy, and Rick were all present. Again, in their defense at that point, it's do you buy into high-level concepts? I mean, sure, they sound fine. So, like, there was some effort at that, and the town was very good at kind of coming together and trying to get some feedback and input from multiple people that it would touch, since you're totally right, there's a lot of commonality. It's just kind of too preliminary, I guess, to have hard opinions on stuff.
That's great to hear, though.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Good
You
job.
guys have a hard job.
Sam, I was gonna suggest that before this recommendation goes to the town council, that when you present the Shanda Park living shoreline, that you present the entire packet of the 3 or 4 pages of the thing and all the plantings and everything else to the town council, so they have a full packet.
Yeah, having everything would be.
Having everything, they're not.
I feel like they'll be friendly to this project, like from my witnessing of this council, but still, I think it's good to give them all the information.
They
Have I provided
established
that
the
to you?
riverfront
I think so,
Yeah.
We can,
entity, so.
Excellent. No, thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so what do we have left to vote on here? Yeah.
I was gonna, so are these projects like secret from the departments? Or like, if we could like, one way we could make it less siloed is that each department can see what other departments have requested, said, hey, that kind of jives with what I'm doing, so then they can have the option.
It's a fantastic point. It gets to having a larger plan that links to the master plan that is visible to everyone, as opposed to the mad rush. Again, you're new to this, is not the system you inherited of. It feels very just rushed to get stuff in.
And I just didn't know, I don't think these are supposed to be secret. Also, like, if every department can see what every department's asking for, we can say, hey, we would be willing, half, and we'll do, so this is like the school and the rec department's like, hey, this helps both of us split the money, and, I think that benefits both of them, and it benefits, and gets the project done quicker.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, with some of the software the town has, where they're using SharePoint sites, where everybody could put their thing in there and they could all kind of go look at it and comment back and forth. I think that might be a good approach. I'm thinking that we must have that. Do you know, Bart?
yeah, we have a common drive that everyone has access to,
That would
has
be a good
access
start.
to documents, shared folders and whatnot.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
So we have several left to vote on that we have never heard from the people.
Right, so we have some letters though, from them. So, one's the library, I can read it into the record.
Sure.
Okay. This is the question, what's the breakdown between the library's capital reserve fund and the trust fund? Newmarket Public Library's trust fund and capital reserve fund are separate accounts. The difference between the capital reserve funds and the library's trust funds is that rather than a municipal appropriation, the origin of the trustee trust funds is donations, lost book replacement fees, grants, non-resident card fees, and monies from income generating equipment. Some of the revenue and trustees hold in trusts is restricted and is governed by such statutes such as RSA 202-A11 and RSA 202-A11A. Trustees have no plans to appropriate these funds for capital projects at this time. Question number 2, what is the approach to replacing the roof? How much will it ultimately cost? And how long are you anticipating it will take? According to Newmarket Public Library's maintenance records, the roof on the west side of the building was replaced in 2016 at a cost of $63,900. At that time, it was forecast that roofing repairs would be needed within the following 5 years, with possible roof replacement needed for the east side of the building within 10 years. Prior library director CIP notes calculated the potential expenses as $64,000 divided by 6, $10,666 a year. In 2018, Tech inspected the roof and recommended repairs at $9,000. Repairs were not pursued at that time due to the inability to locate qualified contractors to bid on the project. During fiscal year 22, 5 roofing contractors were invited to bid on the project. 2 contractors submitted bids, and the contract was awarded to the lowest bidder. Due to the inability of that contractor to meet the insurance limit requirements for the commercial project, the higher bidder will complete the work. $9,575 will be withdrawn from the library's capital reserve fund to accomplish this work. Question 3, 2023, why hasn't any of the capital reserve fund money been spent on hiring an architect? As there is currently $130,857 in the capital reserve fund. Capital reserve fund money will be needed for the replacement of the roofing on the east side of the building, interior painting, the development of the outdoor space that is adjacent to the parking lot in order to improve accessibility. If the feasibility study supports the installation of a new exterior entrance to the basement, funds will also be needed to implement those changes, as well as the finishing of the basement level so that it can be enjoyed as a public space. Question 4. Are there any future plans for the library that will be drawn from the capital reserve fund? Yes. During fiscal year 23, we plan to request the use of $5,405 from the capital reserve fund balance for the electrical wiring and installation of an ice melt heated pad for the building's exterior entrance in order to improve accessibility. Once the roof repairs are complete, we will need additional funds to repair the plaster in the small meeting room that received water damage due to the roof's deterioration. At some point, we will need to request to use the CRF funds to complete the interior painting and develop outdoor space in order to enhance patron access and enjoyment. Implementation for the last project is contingent on the sequencing of the installation of an additional exterior entrance and finishing of the basement space. If the feasibility study results support those changes. Also, the question of whether the installation of a sprinkler system would be recommended will also be determined through the study.
So, when they say repair the roof, is that slate or is that
I think it's a slate
Slate.
roof.
slate? That's what I
Yeah.
thought, okay.
So, but the numbers they're giving are $9,000, right? It's like,
It
it's
still
not,
seems like they have adequate.
they have adequate
reserve.
funds for
They're
that.
Like,
Like,
they don't need any more.
like, now, if there's a plan for totally redoing the basement, they might want to be putting money aside for that. But like, they need a study of that, which is, it's all contingent upon the study, correct?
Correct.
And the study itself is only 25,000 for the basic.
The roof's 63 and 130.
Yeah. Like, I'm inclined that, like, slate roofs don't last forever. And if they have a plan to, like, well, we gotta save money for the next time, we gotta, like, upgrade stuff. But to just fund everything that they're gonna be spending this year and this year doesn't seem like the way capital reserve works.
So it goes back to a plan.
Okay,
What's
it
the
all
future
comes back to the
What's
plan.
the plan?
Sorry,
Yep.
broken record.
Nope.
It seems like they're giving us a lot of information on what they need to spend in the coming years,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of the whole basement. I don't see that in the notes here. But even if they spent all of this, it would seem like they have an adequate capital reserve right now.
Right.
More so than they need.
And then theoretically next year, we have all this time to come up with plans,
Where they can, like, author a plan.
author a plan, more robust narrative, more of a breakdown, and then
Yeah, so we're not disagreeing with any of the needs. We're just saying, hey, right now, you have that model.
Yeah.
That's what I would.
Yeah, they didn't explain why they're not taking money out of the CRF as opposed to, they're not asking, they didn't really answer why they're not taking money out of their funds and why they're asking for less.
Then,
They're sort of saying the trust fund, it's a donation, it's more restricted.
Mhm.
They may or may not be able to use it.
depends on how the trust is written, yeah, I don't know. It's,
But since it's donation oriented, my guess is that it's a much more restricted use.
so what do we think, people? I know.
Alright, we'll just do one by one. So the first one is Newmarket Library roof replacement and repairs.
Is there a motion?
So we'll just need a grade and word of the motion, maybe.
Or if it's being funded at all.
That's what I'm saying, that part of the
Yeah.
motion, yeah.
upgrades and if it's the roof repair.
Mhm.
So, library.
L2.
Yep, library's
the
on page,
It's like,
30
flip,
to
I think flip it
31.
around. Oh no, that,
32 is what I'm used to.
it's got a picture of the library on it.
Yeah.
It's in the back.
Interesting, they asked for that too. Entrance way
Yeah.
and the CIP item, Jane, a couple of years ago.
Has it never happened?
No,
It's
that was
it
even separate. That
gets
was
back to the
separate.
plan.
I'll make a motion to approve the Newmarket roof replacement and repairs, project for
We're not approving the project, but
recommending.
we would be recommending, how much do we want to fund the library capital reserve?
For this year, fiscal year 23, 24. So what's being requested is 10,000?
10,666.
Alright.
What?
No, they're requesting 10,000.
Oh,
That's the email, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so then their worksheet for the 10,000.
Okay. Alright,
And she did put a priority.
yeah.
So,
And this doesn't have to do with an architect, correct? This is just the
This is
materials
roof
and the-
repairs, but
Roof
Yeah.
repairs.
Alright, I'll make the motion for library roof repairs for $10,000. I'm gonna say it's class N if it's roof repair.
is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Feels like they have the money in their fund
Yeah, so I
now.
would vote, well,
This discussion.
I vote.
Yeah.
I would vote no because they have the money. They don't need it.
And they haven't explained why they can't use their money.
It's plenty of money.
Yeah, they have, yeah.
Even outside of even if their trust is untouchable for this, they're sitting on almost $131,000 with no plan as to how they're gonna spend
They
it.
could fix the other side of the roof this year, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Is there a thought process that, if the money goes out, just need you to replace it, and they wanna stay at that 130? Is that what their
So
thought process is?
maybe that they wanna sit, but capital reserve funds aren't designed to be money to sit
Right,
on.
exactly.
They're designed to be spent.
So they would have to convince me within the 6 years that that's not adequate, like we need to further fund it. I don't see anything that tells me that,
Right.
That's gonna be gone in 6 years, and they're gonna be coming back.
that they're gonna be empty or that we need to continue to build it up.
So maybe next year, depending on what the fund balance is in a plan,
Right.
but not
it's
this
a
year.
different
Maybe next-
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same time next year, maybe we do. go
Yeah.
for it now.
Do we know if there's anything else planned for the library, that they just didn't tell us that money's allocated for that?
Basically, what's in this narrative.
Just in there.
Yeah,
That's it?
that's all we have.
That's it?
I don't mean this the wrong way, but there's a reason nobody could be here to talk about this.
Personal issue, for library, Rick, personal, and then, yeah.
All right, any more discussion?
And Amy's away.
But they had a chance to come last week too, right? Like,
Yeah, they did, yeah, they were all
multiple times.
invited, yeah.
We just met
Yeah.
3 times in 10 days,
Yeah.
or whatever you would think.
Right, we tried.
Or send
Oh,
someone?
you're not involved there.
Doesn't Amy have an assistant? Correct?
Yeah, but she rather have sent the narrative.
Okay.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
Opposed?
Motion fails 0-4.
Okay. And now next is architectural feasibility study.
Before we go to a motion, do we have, like, maybe some discussion on this? Are people inclined to fund this or not? Because we have a motion we have to vote down, that's fine, but it feels cleaner just to say, like, we think they have enough money to spend.
Let's see that.
This is the architectural feasibility study for the basement.
So based what I'm hearing, the committees say is that there's enough money to do both these projects at this point in time.
And I would recommend again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but if we have demand sets by different departments, we should be looking at one resource to be able to do both, right? So an architect here, the library, an architect, if possible, through the police station and/or another facility. I know Recreation wanted to try to do something too. So maybe we make a recommendation that they look at that. But the fact that there's enough money, I'm not inclined to support.
I mean, I would be, but they don't really explain why they're not doing. Yeah, again, I like the library, but my only issue is that they're not explaining why they can't pull the money out of the trust fund for this, and they, you know.
Or
Capital reserve.
or even replace, if it costs $25,000 and for some reason they already have a plan for that $130,000, why replace it all the year they're going to spend it? Why not maybe replace that over time?
Right. I think we've got as far as we can go without actually having someone here and
Yeah.
there is.
I would treat this the same as the other one. I think
Yeah.
they have the adequate funding to do it.
Agreed.
And do we make a recommendation though, at the end to say that, you know, if each department is looking for the same resource, that they consider bundling the opportunities
Yeah.
together? Okay. So that would be like a recommendation separate from this vote?
Yeah, like on our cover page.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why
Okay.
we do this every year, so if a year from now this picture looks different, then we can fund it.
Yeah.
All right, I can make the motion so we can keep going. All right, I will make the motion on the architectural feasibility study for the library, class N for $25,000.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails, 0. Rec?
Okay, I have a letter from Amy. I'll read it to the record. I'll try to read quickly.
I'm going to open it too.
I will. Alright, 1. Please explain the Rex Enterprise Fund. The simplest way to explain the enterprise fund is to think of a non-tax-based interest earning savings account which is funded through the Rex revolving account. The Rex revolving account is budgeted line item expense account that the rec department has available to them for the purpose of providing recreational programs that also drive revenue. In addition, at the end of each fiscal year, any proceeds, net profit, over and above the budgeted revolving account expenses goes into said interest earning recreation enterprise fund to be saved, quote unquote, and later used to subsidize large recreation capital expenses, thereby lessening the burden of such purchases to taxpayers via capital reserves. For example, the new Aqua Land splash pad and restroom facilities was subsidized by the enterprise fund for a little over $100,000. It's important to note that the fund is not tax-based money. All expenditures when extracting enterprise funds also need to go through a resolution process with proper approvals. Number 2, prioritization your projects from your perspective. What are? This is a very difficult question to answer because all are priorities in various ways. I will do my best to explain my prioritized list ordered below. 1. Sound system. I choose this as the biggest priority because this is something that can easily be installed. We have an immediate need and it could be helpful to the town in so many ways. For instance, it could be used at sporting events for play-by-play calls and announcements. It could be very helpful at community events like the Backyard Bash, in which the event is spread across the entire campus. We received many complaints that no one heard any of the event announcements. Lastly, having a sound system available would provide a much safer environment during our summer camp program, allowing us to quickly communicate information. For example, incoming thunderstorm, active shooter, to all staff and kids spread across the complex, engage in play. 2. Basketball, pickleball, shade structure. I would prioritize project second, but only if we do decide to move forward with the new concept of an enclosed basketball pickleball facility that can be much better utilized by the entire town than just a shade structure. The recreation department has outgrown the community center, and we are lacking a large space that can not only accommodate our 300 summer campers during inclement weather days, but also be available all school year for our growing program lineup, which includes our new recreation-based play and stay after-school program. Unfortunately, the junior senior high school gym is in use for summer school programs most of the days our summer camp is running. Having a larger space would also allow us to be able to offer indoor winter programs such as adult sports leagues, such as basketball, pickleball, volleyball, dodgeball, exercise programs, etc. This new facility could also be used for town purposes as well, for such things as voting days, large community events, etc. Number 3, skateboard park. I choose this third because the kids do miss the old one and keep asking when the new one is coming. However, as mentioned in the CIP comment section, we no longer want to place it in the same place for several reasons. This would become a priority only if the new location or area I am currently researching is needed workable for building a new skate park facility. I have been told that I would need to spend approximately $9,000 for a design that would include a survey of the land. The downside to choosing this item is the skate park only serves a small population in town. 4, Beach Street facility facelift. I would normally choose this one first because providing a more serene location to offer adult wellness programs is something that we have been talking about for quite some time. We do know that there is definitely a demand for affordable wellness programs in the area. However, I've been told that the town may utilize this facility for other purposes. That is why we may have to wait on this project until we know more. I submitted the CIP again because I wanted to remind you that that we are still interested in the wellness facility project should it someday come to fruition. Number 5, replacement playground at Bolio Field. This project is only being considered after learning that the current playground is no longer up to code based on its proximity to trees and boulders. It should be noted that the playground was built over 15 years ago, and as far as I know, the town has never had any incidents regarding safety before. The only issue with this project is where to place the new playground. This is why it is not as big as a priority. I included in the CIP plan for the first time this year, so in order to start the process of looking for a new location so that we can remove the current playground. 6. Number 3 question. Revisiting your vehicle inventory list, is there an opportunity to set aside funds for future replacement? If you are asking to set aside capital reserve funds, which I believe you are, then this question needs to be answered either by the finance director, Bill Tappan, and or the town manager, C. Fournier. I was told we're no longer putting recreation vehicles in the CIP process, and that any new replacement recreation vehicles would need to be funded by the enterprise fund, which is how the new 2020 transit van was paid for. That's the end.
Can I go? Yeah. The first thing is sticks out to me is that all these seem conditional on finding a place first. Like the skate park. And keep in mind, like I grew up in the 90s. I'm all for the town paying for a skate park for the kids. That's just like a movie dream for me. But the issue isn't the price of skate park. The price is the problem is that they haven't found a place for it yet, and don't like that should be the CIP, right? A study to find where to put it, isn't it? Or am I completely off base?
Well, she has $171,000 that we don't have accounted for how that's going to be spent, from which she could pull to do that study before we start setting money aside for building.
Yeah. Actually, that was my same kind of concern with the basketball and pickleball. It said this is a priority only if we decide to move forward with a new concept of the new pickleball facility. How can we know if they're going to do that and decide this is a priority?
her
Yeah.
write-up seemed very different to me than the request, which was for shade, rain shelter, like for voting and stuff, and for winter leagues. That felt like more like an expansion of their facility.
And I was thinking of it this being, this is like a
Community
step
center,
to get here, to this.
Right.
And I think that even if they don't get to an enclosed area, having the I'll call it tent concept, I think still works.
Yeah.
But I just think it's not, I don't think it's well written.
Yeah.
But, you know, it accommodates, and again, the way I'm looking at it is 300 summer campers is obviously a service to the community, but that's also a revenue stream. So again, putting money out to make money.
Which is how she makes $100K every year in her enterprise.
Right, exactly.
Right, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have like no issue with the tent and with the shelter
Yeah,
itself.
exactly.
It's just I'm just keep getting, it's like, but this is this is our second biggest priority only if we decide to move forward, otherwise it's not, but how are we supposed to know?
It's continuing.
I don't think she said they don't do it.
Yeah, I just said it's second priority if this gets forward.
Yeah,
It
but I
kind of
mean,
circled back to
But,
the plan.
yeah, anyways, I'm okay with the intent, I think some of these are little, like you said, not best, written in the best.
I think 1 and 2 make sense. I think the others are, hey, just so you know, boom, 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 I'm putting these out there so you have a
Remind
feel.
you.
Right, exactly. That's how I took it.
Yeah, I'm okay with the sound system.
Yeah, sound system, I think we could put on right now.
I'm totally fine with the sound system. My question is, why are we funding the sound system
If they have.
wholly in FY23 as opposed to pulling it from the $171,000 they have in there?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a question we had at the library.
It seems here like there's more potential large future expenditures in the offing. There's more projects, there's more potential need for that capital reserve that's like been identified, we just don't know if we're there yet.
Yeah.
Like they already, like I said, they're thinking of making like an entirely new indoor facility, that's gonna be a big, yeah, so that kind of before.
There's probably an unlimited need to spend money here,
Yeah.
more than we'll have.
But Phil, I think to your point though is that if we took a particular stand to the library, hey, you have the money, why are you asking for it?
Yeah.
And there is money in the budget to cover 1 and 2, why is she asking for it?
So I think there's at least money to cover 1. There's not money to cover 2. 2
so-
has a price tag of $224,000.
Right, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we would have to fund that capital reserve
This looks
fund.
different to me than the library, there's more
Okay.
potential need here.
Well, she said the quote for 2021 was 140,000 for installation, including installation.
I'm just looking at the actual.
I know, but is she
request.
saying that it's gone up that much?
That wouldn't surprise me.
Where she's,
In number 4,
Yeah.
the 60 by
Oh, yeah.
90, she said the quote was 140,000.
yeah, they said that they then said you should put a 40 to 60% escalator on that because of
Oh,
the increasing
God.
price.
Mm-hmm.
That's where she gets the 224.
Okay.
And
I mean-
regarding the playground, if we're concerned about trees and rocks, just remove them.
Those rocks are big out there.
What
I get
about
them,
the
though.
trees then? I mean,
Yeah.
we do have resources that the town could use, I'm thinking, I don't know. But to go build a brand-new park,
So it should also be noted that historically, the rec has received, and this is like for years over years, about 15K every year into their capital reserve fund.
So that's the sound system, right? This year?
Well, no, the 15K has gone in
That's what I mean.
for them, the rec department to determine how it wants to spend it against its capital improvement.
Right.
Because they have one reserve fund for all of their plans.
Correct. Again, goes back to your point earlier, this committee's point, an overall plan for the rec department.
What is the town hawk grant?
Yeah, I think it's
Tony.
It's Tony Hawk.
Tony Hawk.
It's a skateboarding
Skateboard
grant.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
All right. So how do we want to handle this? Do we want to have a vote for every single project for this? Do we want to vote for a certain amount to go into the capital reserve fund?
I would do each request, my recommendation.
Okay.
So first one's on page 23.
Actually, I go backwards.
Oh,
Well, it's, if you flip with the staple this way, it's,
yeah,
So we're starting with R7 or?
we can start with R1.
R1 is pickleball.
Pickleball?
The 10 shelter.
Alright. Anyone have a motion on the pickleball shelter?
I will make a motion on the large permanent brick shade marine pickleball shelter for 37,000 this year?
333.
Yeah, 37,333 with a rank of N.
Blank.
Is it N?
Well,
I'm not, sorry, I should,
I just went with.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Alright. Discussion.
I mean, I can see like the immediate use.
Yeah, the camp thing really gets me there,
Yeah,
300
and also,
kids.
yeah, and also there's the part where like, remember the summer we had like those 3 weeks where it was like above 90
Yeah.
every, and like
Yeah.
you just couldn't go. Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah, that has.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
And we did it as an N?
Yes,
As in,
An N.
and it's necessary.
so she didn't even mention the request for the aquas pad.
Didn't you pass that?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. That was like one of.
Oh, we did? Okay.
We already passed it.
That's good, because I would,
Yeah,
now I think it should be, it should just be a budget item.
and like, or an enterprise fund thing or something. I mean, she funded that whole thing. on
So,
enterprise.
and then R3 is vehicles, which she says
She has no request for vehicles, so we're not gonna vote
no
on that.
request.
Yeah.
So, I know, that's why we asked her the question.
So we
R4.
skip through, yep.
R4, the playground.
Elm Street Playground, is there a motion? If there's no motion, then it just falls off the table, correct?
I would vote on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Is there a motion?
Alright, I'll make the motion on the new playground for Elm Street area neighborhood for $20,000 priority N.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
This really feels like, according to this, that this is more of a, we need a study to find out where we could put a new park before we invest the money for a new
Start
park.
the new park, which I think she has,
Low on your priority list.
and she has ample reserve
Yeah,
funding
and
to do that.
yeah, it sounds like for her, she's like, I'm not gonna put words in her mouth, but it doesn't sound like this is like an immediate, kids aren't getting like, this isn't like old rusty stuff, they're
Yeah.
not working on, they're not on a nuclear power plant construction
Nope.
site. Yeah, and she says like there's no instance, this is like very low priority, and I think if the priority, the next thing would just be do a study, see if we have a place to put it.
Then she can decide to do that.
Yeah.
Alright, any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails, 0-4. Accept a motion on Beach Street Center, R5, which it sounds like, according to her, the town has other plans for potentially, so.
yeah, there's discussions on the future of that site, what it could be. Still undetermined.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Need to make a motion, I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
I think you also make a motion not to recommend.
Okay, we can make a motion not to recommend, that way we can.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's fine.
okay, thank you.
I'll make that motion.
To not recommend,
Because we don't know the status of this,
yep.
so we can't invest in it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Skate park.
I will, yeah, again, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
I think where the study should be where to put it before investing in the park itself. And I mean, again, I don't wanna be the town official who goes against this skate park, becoming the villain in one of my childhood movies, but, yeah, it's like, I'm for it, but like, we need to find out where to put it first, if the current site's not adequate.
It feels like they have, again, the money to fund that study that she called it, is a 9K study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. The question would be, I don't know, I'll leave that.
If she's saying that she needs 9K for design, which would include a survey of the land, that's what she should be asking for.
Yeah, not $25,000. Is there a motion?
I would make a motion not to approve the $25,000. And I don't wanna be the anti-skateboard guy either.
Yeah, no one does.
Not to
Without
approve.
the skate park, the whole town becomes a skate park.
Um,
Well, how has it been for the last year without one?
I guess the only thing I'm thinking about is, she has the money to go do the study, but do we wanna start building?
That's
up
what I
a
was gonna
fund
say. Do we wanna start putting
to do
money
it?
aside
Because it's
for it?
something we eventually would,
You can also recommend a schedule too, if you wanted to. Coming years,
Yeah, I mean, she has an aggressive 3-year schedule in
Right.
here.
so you can amend it if you wanted to.
So for like this year, she would do the study and then the money would be for the following year.
so you'd move the whole thing out a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's wrong with it?
I don't even know why they closed it down. Like,
Yeah.
is there an old-
Oh, it was full of holes and,
Yeah,
I think it's on
very
site.
dangerous,
Cracks.
stuff, cracks and stuff jaggedy out of,
Point
So
of
the
order.
deterioration of it.
yeah.
Curly
Not that
slide
we
on the
wanted to-
It was
playground out
rotting.
there, too,
It was
also.
rotting.
Point of order,
Yeah.
we have this from 5:30 to 7, we need a motion to extend, the meeting
I have a motion to extend the meeting. I make a motion to extend the meeting
Is there a second?
till,
till,
let's say 8, give us some
get
time.
8.
I have to leave at 7:30, I have a
Okay.
work call. I
So how
have
about
to-
7:30?
Okay,
Yeah.
then, so extend till 7:30.
Okay.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Ready.
Aye. Opposed?
Jane, did you second that?
I'm sorry?
Did you second that?
Yes.
No one did.
No one did.
I thought Jane did.
I thought Phil did, but he can't.
Who seconded it?
I'll
Who's-
second that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No problem.
So skate park, where are we?
We could either suggest starting to fund something for one in the future. We could suggest she begins bumping it out a year, so she starts asking for funds a year out.
I would be of the line of like we start trying to like suggest we save now, I guess, because this is something I think would be worthwhile. So, and again, there's promises.
I'm so inclined as well. My only concern is that I don't understand again how she's spending the 171 and where the enterprise fund is going to be allocated against this. I like the idea of saving money for it. Disinclined to say 25K.
You can recommend a new number, an alternative number.
Well, she's suggesting she's gonna use a chunk of enterprise money for this,
That's
which
true.
is good.
Yeah.
And it seemed like we wanna keep her capital reserve. There's more justification to keep her capital reserve there. For example, like what we talked to about.
So do we want to fund it for some amount lower than 25K for this first year? We were thinking about extending out the timeline.
I mean, we could fund it for how much did we say? And then she wants 9K for this the design that would. But I've been told that it would need approximately 9K for design that would include a survey of the land. So maybe 9K just so they can.
I would say 10.
Sorry, 10K so they
10.
can do the survey and then we can actually have some. Once we know where it is, we can.
I would hesitate to say it's for the survey, because she has the money for the survey. It's 10 to begin saving money for the ultimate construction of the skate park. I'm trying to, because there's a mentality, I think, right now, not by us, but where I put money in the capital reserve fund, I take it out the same year, which is that's a general fund way of spending. So almost being very explicit, this is to start saving money for the skate park. You have enough money for the plan.
Alright, so, then let's
We have to amend the motion.
amend the motion 10,000 to start saving.
With a code of facility.
D.
Is there a second?
So that's Brian.
Second.
And Jane,
Jane.
you seconded?
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
So that's to amend the motion, now you have to make it.
Oh, okay, so, I thought that was a friendly emotion, I thought you made a friendly amendment.
I didn't think we actually got to seconding the other one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I
we
don't think
stopped
it was a,
Okay,
it wasn't a
perfect.
full thing,
Move
There
forward.
we go.
yeah.
All right, speakers,
Okay.
her number one thing.
I make a motion that we move forward with an, I forget, it's an N is
And it's
necessary, right?
necessary, correct.
With the classification of N, that we approve the, budget for the speakers as noted by the request of $10,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion.
And I'm sorry, should I, because she's taking 5,000 out of the enterprise fund.
Yeah,
so
we don't
the
have to
request
touch,
is
we
for
can,
10.
it's for 10, yeah.
Okay, so I'll make sure, okay. So for $10,000, that we approve the request for the speakers on R7.
Discussion. So I am for the speakers, but again, this is her treating, I'm taking 10,000 out of capital reserve fund, I'm just gonna put 10,000 back in. Which doesn't feel like the right, like she has $171,000, you can take the 10,000 out. Like, why would you refund it by 10,000? Is there a purpose to keep this baseline number in there?
Yeah, it's more of a savings account kind of.
I say, yeah, it's very much like a personal savings account mentality, like I have this rainy day fund as opposed to,
But I think they're all thinking that way.
Yep.
but it's not the purpose of a capital reserve
No,
fund, I think you're right.
I agree.
I think she has some significant future needs, though, that she's showing us, giving us a picture of.
Mhm.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like she's got a lot of big projects coming.
So there's some logic to not wanting to diminish her reserve too much.
But this would only be 10,000 out of 100 and, how much was it?
171,
Keep in
almost
mind that this has
172.
multiple use, to your point,
Yeah.
this has multiple use, the schools can use it,
Yep.
so,
I would also say, keep in mind that we have just funded her 10,000 for the skate park and 30, what for the other one? 37
Plus another
Yeah,
5,000 for splash pad.
plus 5 for the splash pad. She has gotten triple what she normally gets going into her capital reserve fund. That, like, has been growing, like, which is like good if we had capital expenses to spend them against. It's just that
Yeah.
feels like she's got the money to me. So that's just my perspective.
Well, that's a good, segue into visiting the facilities, again, a more detailed presentation moving forward in this
An
process.
integrated presentation of all the capital improvement projects.
Correct.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there discussion? All those in favor?
in favor of the motion.
In favor of the motion to,
Approve the census.
to approve the
Okay.
$10,000, to approve funding the CRF by $10,000.
With classification N.
Yeah, yeah.
All those opposed. Motion passes 3-1. All right, what do we have left?
Alright, we got, fire and rescue vehicles.
We got no answer from Rick or the town manager?
No.
I listened to the
Oh.
recording.
And
I can tell you what
Yeah.
he said.
what's your take?
Well, it's interesting. I tried to take notes. I listened to it about 3 times. The first thing he said was that the capital reserve, he agrees the capital reserve should not be used for lease payments. That's the first thing he said. He said, he said, vehicles should not be paid through the capital reserve, but if we don't, we're gonna have a lot of capital reserve funds that we are drawing of. Sort of like, I'm just telling you what he said.
Just reporting the news, not making it.
So he said, quote unquote, if we did not use the capital reserve, we would have a bunch of money not going anywhere.
So you close the capital reserve fund and return the money to the
And he
tax.
said that for large vehicles like fire trucks, then it's different, and he sees that as bonds or larger notes. So he seems to be saying that his choice or his strategy for large vehicles is some sort of debt financing. And I don't necessarily kind of understand why we walk away from the idea of a capital reserve, which is, hey, we need this fire truck, it costs, you know, whatever, 500 grand, and we're gonna save up the money, so when we need it, we buy it.
Right.
So we're just not doing that. And he seems to suggest then that the use of capital reserve for these lease payments, if we didn't do that, that money would be, we just wouldn't be able to utilize that money that we put in there. This is what his explanation was.
I'm not following.
It's a
Should
little.
I be following that?
Yeah.
It's hard, no, it's a little bit of double speak. I think the thing I walked away thinking about from his discussion is that he's using debt financing for large vehicles. A lease is just a debt financing mechanism. So you've got to stop and ask yourself, is that the most prudent approach? And I'm not saying it isn't. I'm not an expert in municipal finance by any means, but you know, is that the right approach? It is not. It's not really a capital reserve process. It's not the way the capital reserve is designed to be used, and that's not what we're doing here. We're paying lease payments.
And that's consistent with, looks like recreation is doing through their enterprise fund. Police is doing it through general.
Well, he's saying vehicles.
Vehicles
like,
are-
not large vehicles.
Yeah, not large vehicles.
Our budget, and he said, you know, he reiterated that the reason we're doing the police this way is because we buy one every year. Great, I get it. You know, we can anticipate it, predict it, put it in the budget.
But so starting with not really a good use of capital reserve or appropriate use of capital reserve funds to go into like debt financing.
This has been a controversial subject now for 2 years, and I know there's another counselor that I spoke with who isn't crazy about it, what we're doing, besides yourself. I don't know how you feel about it, but, so I don't know what we do with this. I mean, it would be really nice to have a discussion with Steve about it.
It really would. I mean, I'm inclined not to recommend. What page is this?
This is on page 9.
Yeah, I mean, and this whole conversation started with, are we putting enough away? Because of the bump years, where all of a sudden
You did say that, yeah.
And these are for the 2 fire trucks, the pumper and this tanker, so.
Yeah.
I mean, we're paying for debt financing. It's like we have a mortgage and we're paying the annual mortgage payment out of the capital reserve.
Yeah. Or a car payment, frankly.
Yeah,
It's a car payment. It's like we're leasing a vehicle out of our reserve, out of our savings account. We're saving money to lease a vehicle. It's counterintuitive because leases are by their very nature flat, right? So like that the lease is substituting the purpose of capital reserve funding of ensuring a flattened impact on the tax rate.
They're 10-year leases. And I'm sure what happens is you get to a point in time and you haven't adequately reserved for this large purchase. So now you're confronting that situation, and you know you can't kill the taxpayer, so this is a way out. That's what it is.
Feels shell gamey to me. Anyone want to make a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion on the fire and rescue vehicle equipment for
50,000.
50,000. And there's no ranking, but I'm going to say and since it's fire equipment. Yeah.
Is there a second? discussion.
So if we're recommending not to fund it, and we need the fire truck, let's just say.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we've already obligated ourselves, so we have a lease, we gotta pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Can't not pay for it. Have to give the truck back, can't do that.
Yeah.
So what happens?
Yeah, it's just that we, you know, since we're already stuck with this one, fine, but maybe in the future recommend against this kind of procedure.
Like, to me, what happens is they have $129,000 sitting in the fire capital reserve fund. They can pull it from that and take a year to figure out
What they
a
want to do.
strategy for this.
Right.
It's not like we're gonna, I'm assuming that the request here is what we're obligated for this year. Maybe that's an inaccurate assumption.
Right. And to his point, if we didn't use the capital reserve, we would have a bunch of money not going anywhere, that's what he said. So great, use the capital reserve, perfect.
Seems like,
So our thing is whether we put more in there, right?
yeah. I'm disinclined to put more into something that by his own statement is like an improper use of the capital
Okay,
reserve
yeah,
fund.
exactly.
And there's also the 50K that's already supposed to go in there. That the budget committee voted on? Or no, wait, am I thinking of a different?
No, so last year, what
added.
what the budget committee said was, hey, if this is the way we're gonna do it, we're not adequately funding it because we're gonna have this big bump in the road. So put another 50 grand in there. We increased the budget by 50 grand. It doesn't seem like it went in there.
Yeah, not according to all that went in there last
He
year was
wasn't-
50 grand.
They weren't obligated to put it in there.
Yeah.
So that 50 grand went somewhere else. Which shows the, you know, lack of influence that the budget committee has, because we can't even direct the money.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, I think we have to do it for this year anyway, right?
Unless I misunderstood, he has money,
They have $129,000 in there.
Okay.
they can cover it.
Ready to vote? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion failed, 0-4. Sorry, Rick, if you're watching.
Do we wanna put
Don't give
something
the
in
truck.
there and just say and we also this goes into like the
Yeah.
idea about the architect thing, but we recommend a
Great point.
review of how that's funded.
Let's do that at the end.
That's what I mean, yeah.
All right, yep, and we only have, she has to be gone by 7:30.
Yeah, and next is stormwater, page 4. Requesting $25,000 for MS4. So this is an obligation from the town to manage culverts, catch basins, runoff from town infrastructure.
So, I think the question I would have asked him though, is he was like, how much, like, it was 179, I was up to 204, like, what is this is a plan to fund it, what's been the plan to spend this? And we're just saving a bunch of money. Where's it going?
So, just from my perspective, MS4 is an important program. I understand where this committee is coming from and where it's going, but I think it's a necessary program to fund.
My desire to understand where this money is going that we're saving and not spending has nothing to do with my statement of value on the MS4 program.
Right.
It's literally just trying to understand what we're doing to spend money against it.
I'm kind of approving this just because, if something happens, I know, an earthquake, which, probably, but something that requires a bunch of the roads to be fixed at once in a way that doesn't really happen that much, we want this money, right?
No, but this is for culvert, like, this is like for water stuff.
Well,
like
it's also
water
for
flow.
permitting too. There's certain permitting requirements that each year that the town is obligated to meet.
How much have we dropped from this in the last couple of years?
What's the line item from last year? I don't have it in front of me. Nothing?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah. So I understand that too. Again, a recommendation at the end.
I'll make a motion just $25,000 Class N.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
It was a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Okay.
So we put money in last year, we didn't spend a dime.
Correct.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 1 to 3.
Okay, road improvements we already
Already did road
voted on,
improvements.
so next is vehicles and equipment. It's for $150,000. So this is the same amount being requested for the next 6 years. The items to be replaced in fiscal year 23-24 is a trackless MT5, model year 2010. Previous year repair and maintenance cost $12,000, estimated disposal value $5,000.
This is what we have, 187,000.
Yes.
Public
Yeah.
works.
Yep.
In the Public Works
In
vehicles.
Public Works, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, he's doing this much like the police formerly did this.
Yep.
Saving every year a bit that will eventually aggregate that he is expending that money.
Same with water and sewer too.
Yeah.
Right, but this is appropriate
Yeah.
way to do it.
This is literally what it's designed for.
What the fire department should be
Yeah.
saving money. It would be less frequent, more money.
Right.
Yep.
So, I'll make a motion on the public works vehicles and departments for 5,000?
150.
I'm sorry, 150. Sorry, wrong day. 150,000, Class N.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Next is building improvements. This is on page 1. This is all town-owned buildings, repair and replacement of roofs, flooring, HVAC, etc. Request is for $25,000 for fiscal year 23-24, and same request is planned for the next 6 years. Project overall cost $500,000.
So this is $500,000, but that's not really, it's not one project. This is like
Correct.
ongoing.
Correct. Yes. So it's, yes. So
Does that include school buildings as well?
No.
Or no?
No.
That's
School
So,
buildings is gonna come through
Town
school.
maintenance, the rec,
Rec.
here,
DPW, fire station,
yeah, okay.
police station. Oh, there's
Beach
there's
Street.
separate Beach Street. Yeah. Well, this year was on the rec, but yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is there like a plan for what work is gonna happen over the next
There
several
is a
years?
facility studies coming out soon.
Okay.
Yeah, so that has been contracted.
Presumably we spend money out of this every year.
Yeah, it was last year.
This is nothing here.
Nothing. It would probably be under building improvements. 20 grand was put in, so nothing that I think last year was spent at all, on all the accounts.
Okay.
Yeah, 20 grand was put in last year.
Yeah.
Do we know why you have to just 25?
No. I didn't get a response. Inflation.
Supply chain.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll accept a motion on building improvement.
I'll make a motion to approve $25,000 for building improvements for,
What's the code?
and
and
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Is that everything?
So,
Yep, so just now general recommendations moving forward.
I believe you had a recommendation about architects hiring establishing a relationship with an architectural firm that can just have like on retainer or whoever.
Yeah, I guess what notes do you have from our recommendations? Because
Right
we made
now-
a bunch of them.
Yeah, so that kind of capital reserve fund for architect or some kind of service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
any specialized service that
Specialized
the
service.
town can,
It's not a were you saying a capital reserve fund or
Or
just
just
building a
general.
relationship with like one?
I think, building a relationship.
Okay, relationship.
Like we have a lawyer on retainer. Like
Right,
how do we
same-
have? Yeah.
Use the same approach.
excuse me,
The plans need to be fixed.
oh yeah, so CIP process in general,
Process
Yeah.
and robustness of plans and cross-department communication.
and an actual capital improvement plan from all aspects, how they all come together.
think
So
we
like
could-
holistic.
I think we can improve the form, and I think that we could
New form.
have some sort of illustration of everybody's projects that everybody sees.
Yeah.
Like a SharePoint or whatever.
One big-
Even like a grand, high-level, 50,000-foot visibility on the entire plan and how it links to the master plan. So linking all the projects to the master plan. And we have an issue with using capital reserve funds for leasing vehicles.
And we think it's more effective to do it the way Public Works did it.
Right.
Yeah, or if they're
Yeah,
gonna
we
lease
have
them,
all
it's
these
gotta come out of the
laws.
general fund. It
So
can't
what we're
come out of-
saying is, yeah, we shouldn't be using capital reserves to fund 10-year debt financed vehicles.
We should not.
We
Yeah.
should not.
The other question, Phil, that you've been asking every single time is, what is their plan to spend the capital reserve?
Right,
And so the same amount appears on each form, asking for more, but they have they show you nothing of what they have
the
spent. it
past,
for.
right? Like, or what they have.
Right.
So like I would think however we improve the capital improvement plans themselves would include clear understanding of how the current balance is planned to be spent along with any new requests.
Right, so we can properly assess whether we have an adequate reserve.
Right. They're not revolving funds.
And we just voted some down for that purpose, because we
Yeah.
just didn't see it like the library.
Yeah, I think it should be noted that anywhere we voted down requests, it was, I think, almost entirely, or at least mostly, not because of a lack of desire to fund, but because we saw adequate funding in the capital reserve funds already.
Right, it wasn't a, yeah,
It was not a
we
statement
weren't
against the
making
library.
judgment on the project's validity or.
And if someone wants to make the argument that they have a reason why money can't come out, they have to be more specific, like why can't they draw money out of the existing?
We
Yeah.
already have.
Yeah, because it would be against another plan. If it's like, hey, that 170 is against another plan, okay. You need
We have a bigger plan that's gonna require this money and,
Basically, how each plan affects the overall budget moving forward. Yeah.
So, I know we're pushing up against time. I want to be respectful. The other things to be included.
starting this process earlier.
I think we need to, and this is more for us than them, like, we need to think of like an annual process for this that's not involving a ton of meetings all the time, but maybe quarterly or something that gets a cadence that lets us,
I like the idea of the quarter, I think that makes sense.
Quarterly.
Trying to plan a schedule for the year, like we
Right.
know that we're gonna start this the first week of August or whatever it is.
yeah.
Yeah, or we even gave ourselves like another, like 4 weeks as a head start on this.
I know departments would, I'm sure, feel similar.
If we had more time, I'm sure we would have been able to get to hear from people.
Absolutely.
We didn't, which is bad process, you know.
I think the biggest problem I have is that the methodology of how they ask for things is different. So for example, the cars, right,
Yeah.
the trucks. You know, that methodology has to be defined, and everyone has to know what it is, so they all follow it exactly the same.
That's right. I
I
agree.
think that's important.
Unified methodology of CIP requests.
And we just need to spend some time figuring out how we can help them understand linking the capital improvement plan, the plan, of which they are subcomponents to the master plan.
I think we're out of time.
2 minutes.
So we are gonna have to, I think, meet again for the school,
Correct.
but school's on a different timeline, so we have a little bit of breathing room here. Maybe we take a few weeks without,
Yeah.
to come and have a conversation
I'll follow
about
up
the
the school
school.
department. I know they had a board meeting recently did they approve?
So tomorrow,
Tomorrow, okay, that's on the docket.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
Okay, alright,
I'll get there.
you're a man.
The, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. And Bart, could you also let the ladies know that I thought they did a great job yesterday? I think the voting, how well organized that is, I think the town does a fabulous job.
Oh, what was that for? Sorry. Oh, the voting in general, yeah,
No,
yeah,
voting
yeah,
in
yeah,
general,
yeah,
not
yeah.
us, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
the
The general,
event yesterday, the
primary.
voting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a fabulous job. They
Yeah.
have a since I've lived here.
Approving capital projects is on our agenda tomorrow.
That's okay, great.
All right, so we had a motion and a second.
Yep.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. 7:29.